Welcome to Tokyo Game Life, a Tokyo-based video game podcast focusing on Nintendo and gaming culture in Japan's capital. Your host Mono here to bring you a slice of gaming life from Tokyo. Today's feature is about Club Nintendo, the major rewards program for Nintendo in the 2000s and 2010s that had tons of exclusive items. Author Oscar Bown joins the podcast to chat all about the history of Club Nintendo and about his upcoming book about that very thing. In the game section, I try to ascend to a higher plane in order to improve my time on Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. Plus, some news about new games and new happenings right here in Tokyo. Let's start with Oscar Bown and Club Nintendo. Today we're talking about Club Nintendo, the predecessor to My Nintendo. Don't get them mixed up. While it's no longer around, many people have fond memories of Club Nintendo, and there's even an upcoming book to help live out all your rewards program nostalgia. Joining me to chat all about Club Nintendo is a special guest. So guest, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Oscar Bown, and I am the author of an unendorsed anthology of Club Nintendo. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me. Let's start with the basics. What is, or what was, Club Nintendo?
Club Nintendo was a rewards loyalty program that started in Europe in 2002, Japan in 2003, and in America in 2008. And it closed down worldwide in 2015 for My Nintendo. With Club Nintendo, you could buy Nintendo games and you could redeem those rewards.
Yeah, like you said, it ironically launched in Europe first. And when I think of Nintendo's history, you don't really think of Europe first. You would expect it to be launched in America or Japan. But it was, like you said, Europe in 2002, then Japan the year after, and then North America didn't get it till years later. And so this is way before Nintendo did everything globally at the same time. Do you have any insight on why the introduction to each country was so stretched out?
Well, I know for America, it was a case of America was so big and they didn't know if they could just distribute the awards equally. But due to high popular demand from fans, they initially launched it much later.
I'm an American, so I definitely remember hearing, especially news about, oh, Japan is getting this and this and this, but there's no way to get it until finally we got it, but many years later. How did you first become aware of Club Nintendo? Do you remember when you started using it?
When Club Nintendo first started, I was very, very young. So I believe it was my parents who were using it. And I often got the rewards as Christmas and birthday presents. But as I got older, I knew more about it. And I understood the process of getting the codes and redeeming them for rewards. When I was a kid, I didn't know where these things were coming from. But once I got to a teenager age, I'm like, oh, right, now I get it. Right. This is super cool.
Did you go back with all your old games and then redeem a bunch of codes at the same time?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, for me, I'm an American, so I got it last. And it launched in the Wii and DS era. And I definitely remember being interested in the program when it came over here. Because, yeah, like I said before, I kept seeing on the internet, okay, Japan got this, Europe got this, and we got nothing. And while it was a bit disappointing to see regional exclusive goods, especially on the Japan side, I thought the American Club Nintendo had a lot of interesting prizes. Also, the concept of a rewards program where you technically get stuff for buying video games was really unique at the time. And I think maybe even ahead of its time in many aspects. Because, of course, we have things like My Nintendo, which started as Club Nintendo, if you think about it. But would you say there are any major differences between Club Nintendo and My Nintendo?
Yeah, sure. Club Nintendo has rewards that feel like things that you would buy in a shop, while My Nintendo rewards feel like freebies you get for buying a game at a shop. They have a lesser quality to it, but it's still, to me, I love collecting My Nintendo stuff. But there is definitely that charm and premium quality that isn't quite there yet. But I think it's getting there.
Yeah, there were dozens and dozens of different Club Nintendo rewards, both physically and digitally. I think now My Nintendo, it leans more into the digital side of things. And we could probably spend the entire episode just listing off each item from Club Nintendo, because there's a lot of them. But for you, which items really stand out?
Oh, there's a lot. It's the Hot Summer Mario DS series. Those launched in 2004 for the launch of the DS in Japan. And how you got them was through a lottery. You couldn't just redeem them with points. You had to enter a lottery in order to redeem them. And they are very limited in quality. So as you can imagine, they are very expensive on the second-hand market. And they did this again for the launch of the 3DS with a new 3DS line with Mario, Peach, and Toad. And that was in Europe as well, not just Japan. So it was cool that they brought it over. I also like the GameCube controllers. In 2004, in Japan, they had Mario, Luigi, and Wario.
Ooh.
Yeah, they had the emblems of the characters, and they had the color scheme of said character. They're beautiful when they're all lined up together, because even the port is colored to the character. So it's like, oh, it's stunning. And they did physical games as well, which I thought was really cool. There's a Game & Watch Collection 1 and 2 that lets you play Game & Watch games on your DS. And they did Tingle's Balloon Fight, where you play as Tingle,
yes.
the old NES game, yeah.
I often see a lot of the Club Nintendo rewards because I live in Japan, so I see them in secondhand shops. I've definitely seen the Luigi GameCube controller maybe a few times. I do see the Game & Watch Collection physical boxes every now and then, and it does have the Club Nintendo logo on the box, which is really unique. For me, the big one is the Mario Hanafuda cards, and it was a bit mind-blowing that it was available in the US store. Now, probably US stores now, they might carry Hanafuda cards, but in the late 2000s, they certainly didn't. And I saved up all my points to nab this, and it's a really great set of cards. I think the exact design of the cards has been reused for the current Hanafuda cards you can buy at any store in Japan. But the case design is different, and it has the Club Nintendo logo on it in a different art of Mario. So it's a really fun piece of Nintendo merch. And I would say another iconic Club Nintendo item for me is the gold Mario Kart steering wheel, which I see this all the time in used game stores. And you would think it would be worth $1 million in theory, but no, it's probably worth maybe less than $10, but it's still fun to see. And I also think of, like you said, there are physical games, but also a lot of digital games that are only through Club Nintendo. And the one that sticks out for me is Nintendoji, which is a Japanese Club Nintendo exclusive DSiWare game. So you could only download this game if you were a certain tier member of Club Nintendo in Japan. So I really want to know the actual download numbers because it seems like a lot of effort to make an entire game that only a very, very small portion of people will actually download. But Nintendoji did get a spirit in Smash, so he still lives on. Would you say, what are some other notable digital-only prizes that Club Nintendo had?
There was the Doc Lewis Punch-Out game.
Yes.
Yes, it was a one-on-one fight with the coach, Doc Lewis, in an exclusive game only through Club Nintendo. I never got it, unfortunately, but I've seen it a lot, and it looks fun, because it's just Punch-Out, but a one-on-one match.
Yeah.
And there was also, for the Wii, there was Ultra Hand Grill-Off, where they brought back the old Nintendo Ultra Hand toy, and you're flipping burgers. I did have that one. I remember playing that one when I was a kid. It might still be on my Wii. I don't know.
I hope so. Yeah, because a lot of these were never, ever re-released to my knowledge. It's not like they have Doc Lewis Punch-Out on the Switch or anything like that. So we talked about a lot of weird ones, but what do you think is the weirdest or most unusual Club Nintendo item? For me, I want to say the Mario Kart Wii stopwatch, which is just a strange thing to sell to kids.
Yeah, that is a weird one. I think another weird one is they made a box set of Gundam figures. It's really random. It's just, there's miniature Gundams in a box with Club Nintendo on it. And they also did a Gundam Wavebird controller. They also did a, not through Club Nintendo, it was a GameCube. And I guess this released with it as a companion piece.
Oh, yes.
I have looked at it, and those are also quite pricey.
I didn't know that. It's kind of weird, yeah. You can just use all your Nintendo points to buy some Gundam toys. That's something I would have never thought about.
Yeah, neither did I until I saw it on eBay. What?
Yeah, but I have like the big list of all the Club Nintendo rewards open, and there's soundtracks, there's calendars. Did you ever get a calendar?
I have all the calendars.
Oh, okay. We can talk about that soon. And yeah, physical games. There's, the Game & Watch collections, Tingle Balloon Fight. There's also Zekyo Senshi Sakeburein. Have you heard of this game?
Yeah, I have that as well. There was also Excitebox, which released over in the West, but in Japan it was exclusively a Club Nintendo reward, which I think is quite random, I think.
Oh, yes, that's
And I have
interesting.
a game in stores, but it was in stores for the West, but not Japan. Very weird.
Yeah, this was right before Nintendo started to really globalize everything. But this is also kind of what is really interesting about Club Nintendo because Europe has things that Japan doesn't have. Japan has things America doesn't have. America has things Europe doesn't have. And so everyone had their own sort of, I guess, memories about using Club Nintendo, but they're all so different between the countries. And then if you're really hardcore, you have to go through all the different items and try to pick out which ones you like the most. So let's talk about your upcoming book, an unendorsed anthology of Club Nintendo. Tell us the pitch of the book and what gave you the idea.
Well, the idea of the book came from there not being really any sort of proper documentation of Club Nintendo. Club Nintendo was such a big part of Nintendo's history, and just the fact that there's not really anything about it is kind of
Hmm.
puzzling. I've seen lists and videos about it, but they always leave stuff out and they don't really show everything. So with this book, I want to hopefully document everything or every reward about Club Nintendo. It's a picture book that starts from Japan's rewards from 2003 and goes all the way until 2015,
Hmm.
documenting the series it's from, what it is, and the year that it came out. And I've edited thousands and thousands of pictures for this. Every picture requires like a dozen or so slight edits to make it really
Hmm.
pop and make you go, wow, look at that. It just come from there not being anything. And I was like, this is weird. It's so weird. It's Club Nintendo is such a big part and there's just nothing. So I was like, I have to make this book. It's so, Club Nintendo is so dear to me and so
Hmm.
many other fans. There is new items put on eBay every day. So there's still clearly people looking for this stuff. So it had to come out. I had to make it.
Yeah, like even for example, I have like this page open that is it says list of Club Nintendo rewards, but it doesn't have everything. For example, I mentioned Nintendoji earlier, but this page does not have Nintendoji listed or a lot of regional things listed. So does your book have absolutely every Club Nintendo item or are there still a few things missing?
Hopefully it has everything.
Mm.
Every day I'm discovering something that I didn't know existed. Like yesterday, I found out that there's a Club Nintendo Tamagotchi.
Ooh.
I had no idea this existed. It came out in like 2005 in Japan only. Just
Does it have
found
any
out.
special branding or is it just like a normal Tamagotchi?
I think it has a unique shell, but on the packaging it says Club Nintendo with the logo. It might just be a
Mm.
regular Tamagotchi, but it has Club Nintendo on it, so it technically counts.
Yes, of course. Your book has hundreds of very clean, high res photographs. Did you take all these pictures yourself? And what was your process for taking photos of each item?
I have taken every pictures myself.
Mm.
I take pictures of them in a lightbox, and for the things that I don't have, I find them online, and hopefully I can find a good enough picture, or maybe I'll edit another picture to look like something else. But most of the collection is mine, but I've been collecting for years.
How long would you say it takes to photograph one image to your liking?
A good couple of minutes, not too long. Sessions usually go over a couple of hours, and in that session there'll be like 20 pictures taken, and then I'll delete all the ones that I don't want, so I'm only left with like a handful. But it takes a while getting
Mm.
positioning right, color balance. It takes a while. It really does.
What about the digital items? Do you just upload like a high res image of the cover art, or what do you do with that?
So for digital items, I put them on the system. So for example, in 2015, they had 3DS themes. I was able to find those themes digitally. People have the files on them online. And I just took the files and I photoshopped them onto a 3DS template to show them off and to make it more presentable rather than just
Mm.
having the logo or just having a screenshot. I want to make it look beautiful. I want every page to
Mm.
be stunning to look at. So I make sure it's presentable and not just, oh, here's a logo. Oh, here's a screenshot.
Yeah, that definitely seems like how people experienced using that Club Nintendo item when they were using it instead of just, oh, here's the screenshot of, I guess, the peach background or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And your book will soon be on Kickstarter on August 1st. Why go the Kickstarter route?
For the Kickstarter route, I wanted to go all out for this project.
Mm.
Club Nintendo is so dear to me. So I wanted to make rewards that emulate the style of Club Nintendo. So there's a red and green book for Mario and Luigi, and there are add-ons, such as a calendar that celebrates the anniversaries of major Nintendo franchises. And there's a postcard set that's inspired by Nintendo handheld systems, and a golden coin pin, because the points were called coins, and you would use those coins for the rewards. So that's the first thing I think of when I think of Club Nintendo. I think of those coins. So that's the pin, and that's the cover. And you can get a bundle with your color of choice for a slightly discounted price. And there's also a free PDF with every purchase.
Okay, so you get the physical book and also the PDF file as well.
If you want it digitally, yes.
What was the process like of making all these things? Did you have to contact like a bunch of different companies to make this stuff? Or how did you handle the manufacturing of the stretch goals?
I will see how many people buy it before I start ordering and manufacturing. And they're still currently in design. No design is final at the moment, but the design process is going smoothly and it's coming on track. I'm very excited.
What do you hope people take away from your book?
I hope people take away that Club Nintendo was really an amazing time to be a Nintendo fan. It was really a time where you were rewarded just for buying games, because it was technically free. If you were buying every game that came out, you would accumulate so many points. They would be like, yeah, I can get a postcard set or a shoelace set. It was just a cool time to be a Nintendo fan. So different from now. I see so many people saying, oh, does anyone else miss Club Nintendo's rewards? And I'm like, yeah, me too. So hopefully people can remember that time where Nintendo gave this premium stuff out for basically nothing. All you had to buy is games. You didn't have to buy anything else.
Yeah, I feel that same sentiment where it definitely felt like you were getting stuff for free, even though, of course, you're spending dozens or hundreds of dollars on video games. But you're also getting this really cool extra thing that you can't buy in stores, like the Mario Hanafuda cards or whatever else you wanted. You can even register your consoles, not just games, but your consoles. And when you uploaded your DS Club Nintendo code, if you felt like a millionaire because you got so many points. Those are really fond memories of thinking, okay, I'm really rolling in all these Club Nintendo points now. And do you think one day in the future you might do a book about My Nintendo, maybe the first decade of My Nintendo, or will you try your hand at something else?
I'm thinking of doing My Nintendo as a digital-only book that I update every year.
Okay.
So once the year's finished, I will just add on the new stuff that they released. So it's like a cool thing to come back to. Like, oh, look, it's a couple more pages of new things. I don't know how long My Nintendo is going to go on for. Maybe this is a permanent thing. Maybe they're going to close it and bring out something new. And then at that point, I'll probably make it into a physical book. But I also have a couple of ideas of other books that I might want to try. Nothing final, but yeah, I got a couple more ideas left in me.
Yeah, you never know. People might be nostalgic for My Nintendo one day. They'll think, oh man, remember My Nintendo? Because you never know what Nintendo will have like 20 or 30 years from now. They could have something totally different. So it is good that you're cataloging all the My Nintendo information, because somebody somewhere will be very nostalgic thinking about My Nintendo. Club Nintendo, it ceased in 2015 once Nintendo partnered with DNA. And then, yes, they launched My Nintendo. So yes, Club Nintendo is really the origins of My Nintendo. And there's very many similarities, but also a lot of differences, which we talked about in this episode. So what would you say is the legacy of Club Nintendo beyond just being the proto My Nintendo?
I think it could be the rewards were really special. I think just the sheer amount that they released and the quality and consistency of it.
All right, final question. If you could make one Club Nintendo item available today through My Nintendo, what item would you pick?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would love for them. They used to do a lot of 3DS game cases, and that could hold, I think it was like 16 games. They had 3 slips of paper with 2 designs on it each, so you had like 6 designs. I would love for them to bring that again, because you could hold so many games. It was great for traveling, and you had so many cool designs, and that'd be great for Switch or whatever the new system is.
Oh, yes.
That'd be a really cool thing to bring back. Yeah, I love those cases.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad I had to chat with you about Club Nintendo and about your upcoming book. So where can the listeners find you and find your book?
You can find the book at Kickstarter. Just look up Club Nintendo on Kickstarter. It'll pop up. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Oscar Bown Design. I post about my collection, and I'll post updates once the book is available to back. And you can find more information about the book on unendorsed.info. And that's it.
Great. And the links to everything will be in the podcast description, so listeners, check it out. Oscar Bown, once again, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nintendo World Championships NES Edition from our pals at Indie Zero is out now. You know the Tokyo-based developer Indie Zeros from NES Remix, the Theater Rhythm games, and yes, they even worked on Electroplankton. Believe it or not, this is not their first title this year, as they are credited on the Japan-only Game Center CX remaster on the Switch, but they seem to have more of a supervisory role there. It seems most of their development time was focused on Nintendo World Championships. And this is very much in the vein of NES Remix, 8-bit flavored challenges focused on speedrunning. Here, though, in Nintendo World Championships, the games have been de-remixed, and the challenges are authentic segments from the game. You play a brief segment of an NES game, and you're given a score based on your time. The easiest example of an objective-based challenge is that you play the start of Super Mario Bros., and your goal is to get a mushroom. Based on your time, you're given a rank from the lowly C's to the top grade S. The tier rankings for the game are kind of funny. There's B+, then A, then A+, then A++, then S. I guess they want to say, hey, A++, you're great. Not quite S great, though. There are 3 modes, and while World Championships would theoretically be the quote main mode, it's hard to say that's true. For one, it's not at the top of the menu, Speedrun is. Speedrun is where you take on any of the challenges at your leisure. You can try to beat a boss in Super Mario Bros. 3, or get all the eggplants in Ice Climber, or level up in Zelda 2. The challenges are all well thought out, and there's a good mix of things you would naturally speedrun while playing, like trying to get the best time on 1-1 of Mario, and also things you probably never thought about. One of Zelda's speedrun challenges is to get 100 rupees, and you accomplish this by bombing a secret area on the map and then nabbing a single 100 rupee, rupee. Each challenge does show a little video of how to do them, but I will say that following the video 1-to-1 won't nab you that S ranking. You gotta put in a little extra sauce to grab that score. The challenges are separated by game, and within one game, it goes from easiest to hardest. Though you do need to unlock most of the challenges with coins that you get fairly easily, and each game has one legendary final stage. These are longer, more complex challenges that are surprisingly in-depth. Super Mario Bros. 1 has you beat the game with warp pipes. Yes, you have to beat all of Super Mario Bros. 1. Donkey Kong is the same, where you need to clear 3 stages, aka the entire game. But as we all know, the NES version does not have the 50-meter level, so it's the fake version of Donkey Kong. This is just a fact. Zelda 1 thankfully doesn't make you beat the entire game, just the first dungeon, and it starts you inside the dungeon. I never thought about beating an entire Zelda dungeon in 2 minutes, but here that's what you need to do. These legendary challenges come with guides built into the game that are shockingly useful. I thought it would just be vague tips, but no, they actually show you a map of where you need to go for the optimal time, along with some very helpful tips. You can't pause the game to bring up the guide though, so you do need to commit this to memory if you want to get that S. As just a list of 150 or so challenges, there's a ton of fun to be had here. You get to think about classic games in a new way. I mean, I've played Super Mario Bros. 1 so many times, but I never really thought about speedrunning anything about it, except for maybe 1-1, so it does feel like I am sort of really playing these games for the first time. I also like how it shows your inputs at the bottom of the screen, so if you're watching somebody else's video, you can see exactly when they hit A, or when they let off of B, or whatever. 13 games are represented, and they are all iconic NES games, but come on, Ice Climber? Nintendo has basically psyoped us into thinking that it's a bona fide classic. The game is bad. I think I would prefer any other Nintendo-published NES game instead of this. Where's Yoshi? Where's Golf? Please, anything else. I will say I am getting a bit more of an appreciation for some games since you only played their best parts in 30-second chunks. I'm not a Zelda 2 fan at all, but as a 30-second challenge, there's fun things you can do. The exciting thing about Nintendo World Championships is that all the games have their own unique mechanics that are deceptively deep. There's always a little twist on how you control the character. It's not solely about who controls the best, but instead, here are the rules for this character. Try to figure out effectively how to use them in this challenge. Figuring out that stuff is a lot of fun. The speedrun mode is beating challenges over and over again all by your lonesome, but the other two modes are online. Sort of, kind of, a little bit. There's the titular World Championships mode, where 5 challenges are selected as you compete against others across the world for the best time. Now you might think, oh, is there some sort of leaderboard? Kind of. And this is my main criticism of the game. There's no real deal leaderboards in the way you want them. You know the speedrunning mode with all the challenges I talked about? No leaderboards. So let's say I got 2 seconds on the Octorok challenge. How does that compare to others around the world? Or my friends? The answer? I don't know. Each World Championships competition lasts for about a week, and after a week you do get to see some sort of leaderboards, but not during. So you basically get one leaderboard per week that you can't affect. This really hampers the fun and longevity of the game in my opinion. Like, if I get an S rank on a challenge, but then see on the leaderboards that 3 of my friends got a faster time, I'm going to want to keep playing to beat their time. And in the World Championships mode, again, I get S rank, but I see on the leaderboards, I'm actually only the 500th fastest person. That's going to make me want to keep getting better and better. I don't get the idea of do your best and we'll tell you whether or not you did good at the end. Splatoon 3 did this at the start with Big Run, where the rewards were based on the percentile you scored, but they quickly changed this to just a concrete score because they realized people were confused about how good they were doing. And what's crazy is that apparently Game Center CX Remaster on Switch has online world and friend leaderboards, a game Indie Zero just put out. Even all the hamster arcade games have rankings, and even 2017's Super Mario Odyssey had worldwide and friend rankings for the minigame challenges. I just don't get why this game that is built all around competitive gameplay and speedrunning doesn't have visible leaderboards. Right now, the World Championships mode feels like a fishing competition, where you think, I guess I caught the biggest trout, but then during the award ceremony, you realize somebody caught a whale shark. The final main mode is the survival mode, where you compete in a series of challenges against ghost data of other online players. It's elimination style, so you gotta place in the top 4 in the first challenge, top 2 in the second, and then win the third. These are pretty fun and intense despite just being against ghost data. You're going to have to work a bit to win the gold survival challenge. It's also really useful to see how other people are playing the stages since you can also see their screens. I saw someone's method for nabbing the key in the Fanto challenge, and this really helped me get an S after struggling with it for so long. So yeah, having some inkling of how others are playing the game only improves the game in my mind, but the game desperately wants to hide this from you. I do like how your scores across all 3 modes register for that challenge, so it doesn't matter if your fastest time for the challenge is in the speedrun mode or survival mode, you will get the recognition and reward for it no matter where. But for the World Championships challenges, you should try to improve your time in that mode since your scores for the other modes don't carry over there. Your best score in that mode is your best score. I guess this is to prevent people from just getting the optimal time, and then 2 months later it just shows up in a championships competition and they win. But at least for now, there is a lot of overlap between survival challenges and the World Championship challenges. I guess it's helpful in a roundabout way to see how people are doing in the survival mode, then use those strategies in Nintendo World Championships mode, but I would like them to be completely separate. I do feel like the online gameplay in general is a missed opportunity. The local mode supports 8 players trying out different challenges similar to survival mode, but there's no way to make a room of your friends and then pick the challenges where all of you compete at the same time online. There's so much you could do with this concept, like make a room with 8 friends and you compete in 5 challenges. Whoever has the fastest cumulative time across all 5 challenges is the winner. Or have the first to 3 wins mode, where you get a series of random challenges and the first person to get first place in 3 of them is crowned the winner. This game has a great core idea, but they do so little with it in terms of the actual competitive gameplay. I haven't really talked about the presentation and whatnot. It goes for an 80s video game vibe, which is fun, and the menu song is pretty catchy, I admit. There are unlockable pins to collect, and if you're an achievement hunter, you can also use these coins to unlock avatars across all the games, including some really obscure stuff. Another really cool element of the profile is that you can pick from your favorite NES or Famicom game. And I'm not talking about your favorite out of the 13 in the game. They have a massive list of almost every NES and Famicom game. You can pick Ninja Turtles. You can pick Star Wars. You can pick Shin Onigashima, which I did. If you're playing it in English, nothing stops you from picking Japan-only Famicom games and vice versa if you're playing it in Japanese. Obviously, my favorite NES game is Mario 3. Boring pick, I know. But I am searching for the funniest, longest, or most obscure title to set as my favorite. You do see people's profile icons and favorite game in the survival mode, so that does make me want to keep playing that mode purely just to see what people picked. Nintendo World Championships is better than I thought it would be, but not as good as it could have been. This game would absolutely be a home run with online leaderboards and richer online multiplayer options, but right now you really just have to ask yourself, how badly do you want to compete in these challenges, essentially by yourself with limited feedback? There's definitely a lot of content here in terms of just doing the challenges, and trying to get S on all of them will take quite a long time and or drive you insane. There is fun to be had in perfecting your gameplay in games you've played all your life, but now you've unlocked a new way of playing thanks to the speedrun challenges. It's interesting to play these titles in essentially a brand new way, and you really do gain an appreciation for the depth of the game mechanics, despite these games being very simple on the surface. For me, when it comes to challenges, I much prefer the ones that are shorter, like 5 seconds or so. Shaving off half a second from a 5-second challenge is way bigger to me than shaving off 10 seconds from a much longer challenge. So for a $30 single-player challenge pack, there's plenty to do. But there would be so much more to do, and people could customize their gameplay experience more if there were a bit better online options and leaderboards. The word of the day is leaderboards. I would be interested to see if they continue the series. It's called NES Edition in English, so people assume that, oh, does this mean that SNES Edition is coming? In Japanese, the title is Famicom World Tournament, which has a bit more of a finality to it. I had to think this would be the highest selling one though, and the rest would just be diminishing returns. But if the Super Nintendo Edition has more robust online options, I would absolutely be hyped for it. But NES Edition as it is now, I'm having a lot of fun, but it is hard to definitively recommend unless the idea of just doing these challenges over and over again is appealing to you. Okay, that's all for the games. Now for the news. Who is Emio? Well, we know now. Okay, not really, but we know what game he's from. Famicom Detective Club returns after 35 years with Emio the Smiling Man Famicom Detective Club. The first two FDC games did get remakes on the Switch by mages a few years ago, but this is the first brand new title in decades and is headed up by Yoshio Sakamoto, who originally worked on the franchise. I did see some people call this, but I certainly didn't. It is M-rated while the others were rated T, but it does have the same anime art style, so I do wonder if this is just going to be much more darker and violent than the previous titles. Releasing an M-rated sequel to a fairly niche franchise is not exactly the typical Nintendo game plan, but I love that we were getting these riskier titles late in the Switch's life. Like, this game is not going to sell 1 million copies. You could easily just divert this money to the next Mario game or whatever. But Nintendo realizes that one of the most important things to their success is a steady flow of exclusive titles, almost at a 1 per month rate, which is pretty insane. But during the Switch era, Nintendo has expanded their external partners, which makes things like this possible. And yes, I will somehow, someway, have a Famicom Detective Club episode on this podcast after Emio releases, where we can really dig into this intriguing Nintendo series. Famicom Detective Club is back, but do you know who's not back? Chibi Robo. Or is he? Tiny Wonder Studio, headed by ex-Skip staff who worked on Chibi Robo, announced koRobo, an adventure game where you are a tiny robot that explores an apartment. So yes, very much in the way that Bloodstained is not a Castlevania game, this is the Chibi Robo version of that. A spiritual successor, if you will. The game will launch on Kickstarter and Campfire first, and will be released on, quote, modern consoles and PC. I had to think that maybe Switch is out of the picture, since this could be a 2027 game for all we know. But you at least have another game in the Switch 2 lineup, possibly. The game will be directed by Kenichi Nishi, who directed the original Chibi Robo game, and Keita Eto, who directed Ziplash. Both, of course, are ex-Square and Skip alumni. It is kind of crazy to see all the Love to Leak people spread out to the wind, since Skip and Vanpool both shut down. But they're still out there making games. Hopefully it manages to raise what it needs, and I'm sure it will find a publisher once there's more of a concrete game there to pitch. EVO happened, and the biggest or perhaps most unusual announcement is that SvC Chaos is now available on modern platforms and Steam. This was SNK's stab at an arcade versus game, where the S is SNK and the C is Capcom. This was a pretty strange announcement to hype up as a big EVO moment, because the game is not well regarded at all. Obviously, it's hard to touch Capcom vs. SNK 2, but it's also not as good as SNK vs. Capcom on the Neo Geo Pocket, for example. But it does make sense to release it now, because if you release Capcom vs. SNK 2, then no one will buy this. You've got to trick people to pick it up because they're desperate for any versus content. I did talk about this game a few episodes ago, where I was theorizing about a possible Capcom vs. SNK collection, but any of the SNK developed games would probably just be released separately. With this as a single release, it does make me think that we might not get a collection at all, and if we do, it'll just be Capcom vs. SNK 1 and 2, which would be fine by me. The game may not be great, but it might herald great things. Splatoon 3 announced a grand festival, the biggest Splatfest yet. While the promo art makes it seem like the Squid Sisters versus Off the Hook versus Deep Cut, the real theme is past versus present versus future. There will also be brand new amiibos of the Squid Sisters in their kimono attire and Off the Hook in their side order outfits. Now, it hasn't been announced that this is the absolute final Splatfest, but Nintendo did say before Splatoon 3 even launched that 2024 is the cutoff for new content. So I think a lot of people are treating this as the last new Splatfest. It would be weird to do a new one after this one, right? As for who I'm going to pick, I gotta go with Present since that is what Off the Hook is representing and they are my favorite squad. Keeping with the 3 theme, the Splatfest will be 3 days long since it takes place during a Japanese holiday, which is great for me since I missed the last few Splatfests. I still play Splatoon 3 fairly regularly, and it's a great game to just pop into whenever. So I'm extremely excited to see them go all out just one last time. Speaking of going all out, Hobonichi Mother Project is going all out with the 30th anniversary of Mother 2, aka Earthbound, and the newest announcement is a huge soft vinyl NES figure. It's 22 centimeters tall, posable, and comes with some items like the baseball bat and the Franklin badge. It's supposed to mimic the Showa era toys from the 50s and 60s, but the quality, of course, is much, much higher. It looks great. Seriously, check this thing out if you haven't seen it yet. The downside? It's nearly 30,000 yen. It will be available via lottery first, but then will be sold to everyone later on in August. I do want to at least see it though. I'm sure it will be at some Earthbound exhibit in the future. And speaking of new merch, Nintendo Tokyo and other stores are now selling gacha keychains of the Super Nintendo, N64, and GameCube controllers. For the past 2 years or so, they've sold the NES and Famicom controllers split up into keychains, and now the next 3 generations join the pack. The keychains are, for SNES, the US and Japanese buttons, for N64, the buttons and the analog stick, and GameCube is the buttons and the C-stick. These look amazing, but they are gacha, so you can't choose which one you want. And they are all in the same machine as the NES and Famicom buttons, so you have about a 50-50 shot of getting the new ones. Will I try? Of course. I've got to at least give it one shot. I have the Famicom D-pad keychain, and it's really cool. You can kind of fiddle with it, and the D-pad moves. It's not just one big plastic chunk. It looks very authentic to the actual controller. Last bit of Tokyo-related news, right now in Roppongi, there is a Monster Hunter 20th Anniversary exhibit. There's an AR experience, artwork of the games, huge statue displays, a cafe, and of course, exclusive merch. It runs until mid-September, so you have plenty of time to check it out. I'm not a huge Monster Hunter fan, but I do love stories. I might check out the exhibit if I have time because even if you're not a big fan of the series, the monsters undoubtedly look cool and it seems to have a nice layout. Coming out all over Japan, though, is a special Street Fighter collaboration with sushi chain restaurant Sushiro. There are new menu items themed after Street Fighter, aka everything is now spicy, and there are some exclusive stickers and merch featuring new artwork. You can also win some Street Fighter sushi plates via lottery, just in case you too have a sushi conveyor belt in your home. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks as always for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app. Leave a 5-star review as well, it really helps. This podcast is also available on YouTube, so like and subscribe there as well. I'm on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram. Just search for Tokyo Game Life or find the links in the podcast description. If you like the podcast, be sure to share with your friends and on social media. If there's anything you want to talk about or cover, don't be shy, just message me. The next episode will be on August 11th. See you next time. Matane!